Proof of life at Penn State.
First species that we'll show in this presentation is a vertebrate called the eastern gray squirrel. They acquired their energy through their diet and what they eat. They eat a variety of nuts and seeds, fruits, plants, and insects. An adaptation that they have is their heightened sense of smell. It can help them obviously find food, but it can also actually help them detect stress levels of other squirrels to help them determine if there's like a threat or like a predator nearby. And they are important to humans in a direct and indirect way. They can sometimes be used as food and fur, but also they can help spread spores and seeds, which can lead to plant growth, which can improve the environment for humans. And an interesting fun fact about them is that their eyes are tilted upwards so they can better detect predators from above.
The invertebrate we chose was the yellow garden spider. The yellow garden spider uses web to capture small organisms that may fly through and feeds on them, like grasshoppers and butterflies, mainly. The spider constructs its web between vegetation in moist climates where its common prey are located. A lot of times it'll be found where two different environments are meeting. This organism is important to humans because it protects crops from flies and other organisms, and it also protects humans from the flies that may carry diseases. And a fun fact is the yellow garden spider constructs a filamenta, which is like a thicker silk, and it can be used as defense against bigger predators. And it can also work as like an eject button and launch themselves off their own web.
We did the purple beautyberry, and the purple beautyberry acquires its energy from obviously photosynthesis, like all other plants, and they actually grow best in very sunlit areas, so they don't grow very well in the shade. Their fruit, the berries that are on it, is high in moisture content and is an important food source for many different types of songbirds and finches and even some types of deer. The purple beautyberry is it used to be actually very important for humans. Farmers used to use it as a mosquito repellent, and Native Americans actually used it for medicinal purposes. It's not as used anymore, but it used to be used for those purposes, and is actually very tolerant to fire. That's the fun fact.
The fungi we chose is the hare's foot inkcap. It mainly grows on waste soil and wood chips and feeds on nutrients within the environment. The organism has an extremely short lifespan of like a few hours. When it dies, it dissolves into like a black ink that contains its spores, and that's how it spreads its DNA. The ink cap helps break down organic material and spreads it, which benefits humans who have them within their gardens or farms, and as well as the environments that humans live in. Uh, the fun facts is that the name hare's foot ink cap comes from the look. I mean, the top of the ink cap looks like a hare's paw, and there is no evolutionary advantage to this. So.
For our non-flowering, we chose the Japanese maple. The Japanese maple interacts with other organisms in its environment by acting sort of like a beacon for species around it. Birds use the structure of the maple kind of as a sheltering canopy, and they use the maple to get seeds from it that they use for nourishment. And the tree provides secure nesting for the birds, and it attracts insects because of its bright colors, which acts as a food source for other species. It reproduces in three ways, which are seed reproduction, grafting reproduction, and stem cutting reproduction. The seed reproduction is mainly used to produce mass numbers of Japanese maple grafting understock, which will get grafted with the desired cultivars. And the grafting reproduction is slower, but is still the desired method of reproduction for slow-growing varieties and dissected leaf varieties. Scions that fail as grafted plants have more success when they are on their own roots, and dissected leaf varieties have faster growth rates. The stem cutting reproduction is separated into three categories, which are softwood cuttings, semi-hardwood cuttings, and hardwood cuttings. Each type of cutting is just it's dependent on what time of year it is, whether which one will be used. And most stem cutting reproduction that is done is softwood cuttings. The Japanese maple, it benefits humans because it adds color to your garden, which makes it more vibrant, and it acts as a microhabitat and can help biodiversity. And it provides sustenance for various creatures such as birds or insects. And The fun fact about it is it can provide visual mediation and lower blood pressure and quiet the mind. And for our sixth, we chose another invertebrate, and we chose the earthworm. Earthworms are decomposers, which mean they get their energy from dead things such as dead plant materials, leaf litter, wood, animal carcasses, and feces. Earthworms are important to the environment because they make vital nutrients available to the environment's primary producers. They break apart complex organic materials into simpler substances like water or carbon dioxide, and they can also break down organic material into compounds that have nitrogen, phosphorus, and calcium, which all help plant growth. And earthworms are important to humans because they increase the amount of air and water that get into the soil. And when they eat, the castings they leave behind are a good form of fertilizer. So earthworms act sort of like free help for farms. And a fun fact about them is they can make 1 ton of castings for every 10,000 worms. And castings are just the fertilizer they make.
In terms of how successful we were with identifying our organisms, we were for the most part successful, but the CCAP did have some issues where even if you like had the camera right on the organism, would have a tough time getting which exact organism it is. And in specific, like to be specific, non-firing plants were the hardest for that because they don't have any like huge identifying features that really stand out. So it was a little harder to identify those. To kind of fix this, we would suggest understanding the environment, climate, and geographical location before attempting to complete a catalog so you can better understand what you're looking for and then identify the species easier.
So our research question was, how does the eastern gray squirrel's cognitive ability contribute to its success as an invasive species in non-native environments away from Penn State? And our hypothesis was that eastern gray squirrel's cognitive ability will improve its success as an invasive species in non-native environments by allowing them to better adapt to the routines and means of nutrition in foreign environments. The article we used was the cognitive performance of wild eastern gray squirrels in rural and urban, native and non-native environments. And to summarize the article, the study found that the native urban squirrels had a higher success rate on the first visit for the difficult problem, which was the experiment they did, have an easy and a difficult problem, than the non-native urban squirrels, as well as better memory retention and learning than the non-native urban squirrels. So this graph from the article shows the relationship between the success of eastern gray squirrels in a cognitive task and whether the squirrel is native, non-native, rural, or urban. The white bars represent first, which is the first time the squirrels were presented with the task, and the black bars represent the final time they were presented with the task to show their learning curve. This figure relates to our question because its intention is to find a correlation between cognitive ability and success of squirrels depending on their native environments.
And if we were to do this experiment again in the future, we would use two different populations of eastern gray squirrels, and we will model a habitat by selecting the area of Penn State. The two different populations will represent native and non-native squirrels, and we'll measure the total accumulated food by the squirrel populations to determine which species was more successful or which population was more successful. And based on our hypothesis, we would expect both populations to have similar levels of nutrition due to the cognitive abilities of the squirrel. And here's our works cited page.
Great.
All right, I think
Thank
we're
you.
good.
Okay. All right.